Feel-good dramas aren't for everyone. They're a little boring because they generally lack conflict and heavily focus on positive, healthy relationships that are going through a minor rough patch. Today's movie, Lifemark, focuses on abortion, adoption, and the struggle that a family went through in deciding what was right for them. There is a lot of strong emotion, a plethora of sappy speeches, and a vomit-inducing amount of kindness and happiness. David is living the good life with his adoptive parents. He's just turned 18 and he's worried about which college he's going to get into. So when his biological mother reaches out to him online, his world is turned upside down. Lifemark tells David's story as well as the story of his biological and adoptive parents. Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review new movies and television shows and try to release a new review every day from Monday to Friday. Lifemark was written and directed by Kevin Peoples and co-written by Alex and Stephen Kendrick. It stars Kirk Cameron, Alex Kendrick, and Marissa Lene Hampton. Cue the positive drum roll. The cast does a fantastic job with the emotions. The production quality is good, with a soundtrack that hits like a 10-ton emotional truck and decent visuals. I'll start with the cast. There are a lot of characters and there isn't enough screen time to go around, so some of them end up neglected. Even so, everyone does an amazing job of expressing themselves, reacting to the situation, and making good use of their time. The real standouts of the film are Don Long, Lowry Brown, and Rafael Ruggiero. Ruggiero plays David Colton, the main character of the film. He's an 18-year-old boy who isn't quite comfortable with his place in the world and wants to know more about his birth parents. He's kind, thoughtful, and forgiving. Ruggiero has a lot of charisma and plays the emotional reactions really well. The scene of him learning about his little sister was quite touching. Don Long and Lowry Brown play the older biological parents of David, Melissa, and Brian. They both struggle with their decision and show a lot of passion for meeting David. Long, as Melissa, is a bit bashful and considerate. She tries not to be overbearing with David and feels sorry for having to give him up. Long gets across the guilt and pain Melissa is feeling in a convincing and touching way. Lowry Brown as Brian is also happy when he finally meets David, but is hesitant to do so. He's felt conflicted over his part in what happened and isn't sure David would want to meet him. He comes off as scared and emotional, and yet when he meets David, he's overjoyed. Brown plays the change of emotions well. Backing up the cast is a soundtrack that elicits and amplifies powerful emotions. It swells at the right moments and makes each and every moment feel like a Hallmark one. The soundtrack is made up of orchestral instrumentals and boilerplate tracks, but each is used so effectively that it might as well have been handcrafted for the moment. The camera work is smooth and the visuals focus on centering the characters and capturing their emotions in detail. It works well for the story, but it also doesn't stand out in any way. There are a lot of simple shots and there is a lot of cutting back and forth between the actors as they speak. Most of the shots are close-ups or mid-shots of people talking. Now on to the final topic, the story. On some levels, the story works well, and on others, it comes off as straight-up propaganda. The entire story is lacking a central conflict. The view the movie presents on abortion is one-sided, and all of the characters are boring. The dialogue is filled with sappy nonsense, and the entire thing is incredibly predictable. From start to finish, it's clear how the movie is going to end. Brian and Melissa are clear about how they feel, and there isn't a reason to believe their opinions had changed. David doesn't struggle with any part of his adoption, at least not on screen. And everyone in the movie reacts in the most positive, wholesome manner possible to every single problem. It's boring unless you want to watch a family reunion for an hour and 40 minutes. The closest the film comes to conflict is the doubt Brian feels, and that is given almost no time and clears up off screen just in time for Brian and David to have their feel-good reunion. The movie also doesn't present the other side of abortion or adoption and instead presents a very narrow reading of both issues. It spends nearly an hour and a half talking about how amazing adoption is and how wonderful all the people involved are, and then devotes the last 15 minutes to saying how awful abortions and the people who run the clinics are. It ignores the reality of adoption for most people, ignores the necessity of abortion for some, and attempts to demonize those who get them. It felt and sounded like propaganda, and I hope that no one sees this movie and thinks that all adoptions are this magical. The characters are all the same person with no outside personality, and they all do and say the most compassionate, wholesome things at every moment, always. It's boring when literally every character is the perfect person, and there is nothing to distinguish them from one another. Every speech is sappy and overly filled with emotions, and no one ever stops to just talk normally to one another, as if every moment was a cinematic moment meant to change the world. It's overly dramatic and again, boring. It never attempts anything different, so every scene has the same emotional effect. Lifemark is a Christian anti-abortion propaganda story that is told really well, but lacks most of what makes the story interesting. Its characters all act, talk, and even look similar. The story involves nothing but feel-good emotions, and presents a very narrow view of the world. It looks nice, sounds great, and the cast does a wonderful job, but if you want to feel good about something, I would still suggest a different movie. Try Secondhand Lions. 6 out of 10.